I'm going to talk about this first season of Ahsoka. Now that it's done, and I'm going to give you the heads up warning. I didn't like it. All right. Spoiler alert. I'm going to bury the lead here, or not bury the lead. I didn't like it. And I've had a lot of people asking me, John, we know you don't want to crap talk on stuff. That's why you haven't been reviewing all the individual episodes. But now that's done, can you just tell us why you didn't like it and blah, blah, blah. So it's like, you know what? Okay, this one last time, I will go into it. And the reason I'm going to go into it is because that is actually the topic of today's Mint Mobile Hotline Question of the Day. If you guys have a question or a topic you'd like to hear me address here on the show, go ahead and call Ryan Reynolds' own Mint Mobile Hotline anytime, 24 hours a day, at 951-268-4259. And the topic of today's is clearly about Ahsoka. Check it out.
Hey, John and crew. This is Ben calling from Ohio. I know you said you tapped out of Ahsoka, but I finished the series last night, and I found it to be a mixed bag at best. And I really found Dave Filoni's direction to be weak and thought his episodes were clumsy with the writing and dialogue. And I know his big Mandoverse movie is next, so should fans be worried about this movie being as weak as his other live-action episodes? I personally don't have a lot of hope for it, but I wanted to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
All right, Ben, thanks a lot for calling that in. Let me set a little bit of groundwork here for those maybe of you who don't know about this. Okay, so I don't like crap talking on things. I rather focus on the things that I like and not spend my time crap talking on things. I know there's other outlets and channels that just like to be negative all the time. I don't like to be that. So after a couple of episodes of Ahsoka, and I mentioned that I wasn't really enjoying it, I decided not to talk about each episode of Ahsoka anymore because I didn't want to rain on the parade of other people who were enjoying it. Like, everybody knew I didn't like it. So why should I spend my time, you know, as Chris Carr would say, yucking on other people's yum? If other people enjoying it, why would I want to interfere with that? So that's why I haven't talked about it. But a lot of people got very angry at me for not talking about Ahsoka. And it's like, look, I just stayed on my principles. I don't like to be negative. I expressed that I didn't like it. Now I'm going to let everybody just enjoy it in peace. So now that the season is over, now that it's all done, I had a lot of people writing to me, can you at least when the season's over, just summarize, you know, why you didn't like it? I'm like, okay, fair enough. So that's what I'm going to do here right now. Now, let me start off with kind of one of the things you mentioned in your call there, Ben, about Dave Filoni. I've said this before. I will say it again. I have all the belief in the world that Dave Filoni is ultimately going to be a very good live action director. Remember, he's very inexperienced when it comes to live action stuff, but I believe he has got the absolute right attitude. He's got a storyteller's kind of mind. But I believe mostly because of his attitude. Again, I've mentioned it before, but that episode of behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, when they on set of the first day he was ever directing anything live action, and he looks at the camera and he says, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Other people may have recoiled at that. Me, I went, this guy, there's no limit to how good he can be. There is no limit because he's got that attitude. He is going to soak up information and wisdom from other directors around him. He's going to hone it. It's going to take time, but I still 100% believe in Dave Filoni. And I believe, you know, once he gets over his Ahsoka obsession, I believe he's going to be not a good, I think he's going to be a great live action director one day. I really do. A little shaky right now. Sure. He's brand new at it. Live action directing is a different thing than animation directing. So yeah, a little shaky right now, but I have all the faith in the world that he's going to be great. That said, I did not tap out of watching Ahsoka because it's Star Wars, so I kept watching the episodes, hoping to find something that I liked. Episode 4, by the way, was spectacular. I loved episode 4. I think episode 4 was a top 5 episode of Star Wars stuff ever. I really do think, as far as Star Wars television stuff goes, I thought episode 4 was remarkable. I really loved it. But listen, I'm sorry, guys. This is nothing but a member berries series. And again, I'm only speaking from my own perspective. If you loved it, that's awesome. People asking me what were my thoughts. I'm just giving you my thoughts, and they are only from my perspective. I am not claiming to speak for anybody else. Okay. At the end of the show, I remember Ann turned to me at the end of the finale and said, so what was this show even about? I'm like, you know what? I don't know. They did an entire sequence where it was like the member berries of people who watched Clone Wars, like where they reenacted a bunch of stuff of Clone Wars and they had Anakin there. But by the end of it and by the end of the series, I talked to a friend of mine who really loved the series. I said, tell me what was the point of that entire episode of Anakin being there? What ultimately narratively was accomplished? And they're like, nothing. I just like seeing Anakin. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But there was literally no point. If you took that entire episode out, it doesn't change anything about the show. I love Rosario Dawson in the role, particularly in the Mandalorian series, but the way they used her in this series, she was tonally very flat. It was, Rob often talks about like very one-dimensional. It was very one tone. There was no dynamic range with the character. And while I love Rosario Dawson and I want to see her continue to play this character, I think it might behoove them that maybe in some action sequences bring in an action double, because there are some times that she looked a little bit clumsy and slow doing it. I mean, way better than I would have looked if I was doing it, but I think maybe there would have been a good opportunity there once or twice to put in an action body double to do some of the sequences to make them look a little bit more impressive. The logic decisions in this show were also ridiculous. Look, we went back to the whole thing. It's like, wait a minute. So a Jedi Knight and a general in the army are telling you, we found all this evidence that something really potentially bad is happening. I need to go check it out. And the Senate says, no? What? Oh, by the way, we can't afford to send the fleet over there. But if you and 5 other people go check it out, then we can send the whole fleet out there to bring you in. Like, what? Like, none of that made sense. Then with the whole thing about even the first episode about them letting Baylan and Hadi on the ship, that made no sense whatsoever. But here's the thing. They take their best character, Baylan, who was amazing villain, right? And they set stuff up and they never brought it to resolution. They set it up that Baylan had his own thing. Okay, what was that own thing? Oh, we're not going to tell you. Really? And then they set up another mystery. There's only 2 mysteries in this series. One, what was Baylan actually doing?
And why am I watching this?
And why am I watching this is the other one. And the other one was, what's the cargo that Thrawn is loading on his ship? Oh, they're not going to reveal that either? Okay. And in place of actually answering any of the questions that the series brings up, we've got, by the way, I'm spoiling things here. I mean, the show came out yesterday. If you like Ahsoka, you've probably already seen it, but just a little warning, I am spoiling some stuff here. So instead of telling us what Baylan was doing, or instead of telling us what's the cargo he's loading up, we get zombies now? So Star Wars has zombies now? Really? Oh, and Sabine never could use the Force before, never had any inclination towards the Force, but suddenly now she can do it. And she's so confident in it that she tells Ezra to jump across this impossible chasm, goes, don't worry, I got it. I moved one lightsaber once with my mind. I'm pretty sure I can hurl you across this chasm. I'm like, really? That's what we're doing? And then Thrawn gives this big speech, right, to his right hand, and he says, all these people have underestimated Jedi before. I will not make that mistake. Oh, okay, Grand Admiral, we're not going to underestimate the Jedi. Cool. What should we do? Send 2 TIE fighters to engage them. 2? We just saw in the Star Destroyer hangar deck, you got like 30 TIE fighters, man. You just said, let's not underestimate the Jedi. And instead of sending like 15 ships to go blow her out of the sky, send 2.
He's like, but I don't want to overestimate them either.
Yeah, it's equally as dangerous to overestimate. It's just that he gives this big speech. Too many people underestimate. I myself has once underestimated the Jedi. What should we do then, General? Send 2.
Some call me Tim.
Some call me Tim. We're like, what? What? Anyway, it's these logic things. On top of the fact that, hey, the whole 10 years or however many years Ezra and Thrawn have been on that planet, Ezra's literally, on this entire planet, Ezra has literally been living within walking distance of this headquarters thing, and where they're rolling across a flat desert plain, and like, no, Thrawn, I have no idea how to find Ezra. We tried. I lookseed, and we couldn't find him. Anyway, that's kind of a little bit of a side thing, but I mean, those things, those logic problems, that lack of basic competency in storytelling just continue to add up and add up and add up and add up. And then you get to, you're hoping for some kind of payoff at the end. And all we get is, by the way, the big confrontation at the end is Morgan versus Ahsoka again, right? Here's the thing. We've never even seen these characters on screen together this year. And we're supposed to feel some kind of big emotional investment in this big confrontation. You know, it's like the last Hobbit movie. I talk about, you get Thorin Oakenshield versus the White Orc, and I'm like, there's no emotional investment in it because it's literally been 3 years since we've seen these two characters on screen together. They haven't built up any dramatic tension with them. So by the time they have Morgan and Ahsoka facing off, it's just another bad guy versus the hero. It didn't have any more emotional stakes than that. They should have figured out a way to have the two of them interact, because that ultimately was the big confrontation, and it fell flat. I felt story was directionless. They didn't develop their characters. The logic in it made absolutely no sense. And then the two mysteries they actually do introduce us to, they never established them and never paid them off. And listen, if this was a Marvel show, we'd all be screaming bloody murder of, they did nothing but set up the next show. That's all they did. Remember, that's what people complain about all the time. And that's all they did. Thrawn got away, okay. And everything else was, what's going on with Hattie? No idea. What was the whole thing with Balin? No idea. What was the cargo that Thrawn was loading up? No idea. If it would have been anything else, and I pose this to my friends who are Clone Wars fans, if this had been any other show that did that, we'd all be screaming bloody murder. But because it's Clone Wars member berries, we don't. And like, I'm guilty of that too. We are all guilty of that. I mean, it's a thing, but but that's why I felt so bad about it, that I didn't want to week after week after week after week just get on air and talk and complain about the show, because I didn't want to ruin other people's experiences. So this is the last time I'm going to discuss Ahsoka. Now that the series is done, that's my overall thoughts of it. Is it as bad as Book of Boba Fett? No. It's still better than the Book of Boba Fett. That one episode, episode 4, so good. That one episode was better than the entire thing of Book of Boba Fett. I put it roughly on the same page with Obi-Wan. They had different strengths and different weaknesses. You know, I just, and I want to be clear, I didn't hate Ahsoka, because I still love Rosario Dawson in the role. I mean, I love the fact that we have Grand Admiral Thrawn, even though I don't think they did a very good representation of Grand Admiral Thrawn here. I like the novel's representation of Grand Admiral Thrawn more. Episode 4 was absolutely fantastic. There was some really good, decent action sequences throughout. I thought they introduced us to a great new character in Balin. It's so sad that we're not going to be able to have him play the role anymore, but I'm sure they'll recast and get a really good actor to do him justice. So there was good things in there. There were good things. But I think at the end of the day, for me, it was just a memberberry show that was narratively directionless and too many logic problems. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Vessi. Now, like me, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of Vessi, the shoe that claims to be incredibly comfortable and waterproof on top of that. Well, these claims are really interesting to me because as a Canadian who walked around in a lot of snow, and as somebody who likes to go camping and hiking with his wife on the weekends, there's nothing more uncomfortable and horrible than walking around in wet feet. So after receiving my first pair of Vessis and noticing how incredibly good looking the shoes are and how mind-boggling comfortable and flexible they are, the first thing I did was I took them into the backyard to put it to the supreme waterproof test and dipped my feet in my pool. Guys, my feet were bone dry, and like 20 seconds after having them in the pool and I touched them, the shoes themselves were also bone dry. Guys, seriously, these shoes are stupidly comfortable, they look great, and they absolutely lived up to the claim of being waterproof and keeping my feet dry. I absolutely love my Vessi shoes. So guys, if you want shoes that are good looking, are ridiculously comfortable, and on top of all that, waterproof? You need to head to Vessi.com/Campea and get yourselves a pair today. Go to Vessi.com/Campea and get shoes for your best summer yet. Anyway, Chris, I know you haven't personally had a chance to finish the final episode. You've watched all of it. You've watched a bunch of the last episode, and I just spoiled a bunch for you. So,
I tuned out so hard.
You tuned out. So, I know overall now, here we are. You did watch 7.5 of the episodes. What was your overall impressions of Ahsoka?
For the most part, I've enjoyed it. There have been things where I go, "Oh, that's pretty meaningless," or there's a better way to approach this. I wish this kind of thing had more meaning. Ahsoka going to what I assume we can call like the heavy side layer. We'll get cats with it. Like her going to Jedi purgatory,
right.
All of that. I think we could have had a better payoff there, a better exploration of that. That could have been a really cool, interesting character study. I do think it is a lot of, hey, if you like Rebels, hey, if you like Clone Wars, this is for you. Check out these kind of homages we do to that. Check out this in live action. But I've enjoyed it. I will say, though, I think one of the reasons why people sometimes get really precious with how Star Wars should be is we put it as this kind of pinnacle of sci-fi, and it's not. Star Wars is fantasy. It's dressed up as sci-fi, but it's fantasy. It's always been essentially...
I think that's fair. I think calling it more fantasy adventure, I would agree. It's more fantasy adventure than it is. It's got touches of sci-fi, but I think you're right. I agree with you.
We dress it up with the science fiction flares, but we don't need to explain the science, which a lot of science fiction does. Don't get me wrong. But it's, at the end of the day, it is magic and wizards and things like that, and saving princesses from black knights. So I think sometimes when it doesn't deliver in the way we think it should, we have to revisit A New Hope and say, is this the continuation of this version of this story? Or are these tales now things that I expect so much more from? And we talk about this all the time, too, with how Star Wars can contain multitudes and should. It should tell different types of stories. It should tell different kind of things where it's more spy thriller espionage, things that are more sci-fi heavy, things that are very fantasy. It just doesn't always execute them super well. When it does things where it's more of the tale of the lone samurai, right, the Ronin, that does really, really great stuff. And I think there's some really wonderful moments in Ahsoka, and there's some other things that's more of the payoff is that you're getting a nod to something else you love. And that's a little disappointing. But I definitely haven't had as bad of a time as you.
Yeah, there were a lot of times during watching the 8 episodes of Ahsoka where my reaction was, oh, did they really just do that? Oh my God. Yeah, that was me. I wanted to like him. Again, I don't want the negative to completely overshadow the positive. There were good things about it. Made my heart smile to see Ezra and Sabine reunite in the last episode or 2 episodes ago. That made my heart smile.
Ezra is fantastic.
That's a member berries thing for me because I'm a Rebels fan. I like Star Wars Rebels very, very much. I actually prefer Dave Filoni's Rebels than over his Clone Wars. A lot of people disagree with me on that, and that's fair. But I like seeing that. Again, there were positives. It's just overall, I was just. Yeah, I'm disappointed with the show. I'm disappointed with it, and I hope things can get better. Anyway, hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.